Welcome to the course finale. Over the last 10 modules, you learned each step of Focus PDSA one at a time. In real improvement work, you never use those steps in isolation. They connect into a single continuous story. So in this module, we do exactly that. We take the Tiny Steps project, our necrotizing enterocolitis reduction project, and we walk it from the very first problem statement all the way to spreading a proven change. No new theory here. This is the whole method in motion, so you can see how one step feeds the next. By the end, you should be able to picture running your own project the same way. Let's begin.
Here is the entire method on one slide. The 5 teal circles are the focus phase. This is the thinking half, where you understand the problem before you touch it. Find the process, organize the team, clarify how the work happens now, understand the root causes of variation, and select the change to test. The 3 navy circles are plan, do, study, the testing half, where you try the change on a small scale and read the data. And the green circle, act, is the decision, adopt, adapt, or abandon. The dashed green loop is the most important arrow on this slide. Act feeds straight back into plan. Improvement isn't a straight line that ends. It's a wheel you keep turning. Keep this picture in your head as we walk the NEC case, because every slide from here maps onto one of these circles.
Let's meet the project. The unit is a NICU, and the patients are very low birth weight infants, the babies most vulnerable to necrotizing enterocolitis, an inflammatory injury of the intestine that can be fatal. At baseline, NEC affected roughly 7% of these infants. That number matters. High enough that reducing it saves lives, and common enough that you can actually measure change without waiting years. The team's plan was a feeding bundle tested over 2 PDSA cycles. Our primary anchor is Mukhtar and colleagues from 2024, with supporting evidence from the Gephardt 8 NICU Collaborative and Kaplan 2018. The card on the right is where we're headed. NEC from 7% down to 2.8, and the adherence number underneath, 78 up to 91.6%, is the quiet hero of this story. Hold on to that idea. The process measure is what moved the outcome.
Now the walkthrough starts. Step 1. Find. The team didn't pick NEC at random. They picked it because it checks every box for a good first project. It's serious, it's measurable, and everyone agrees it's worth solving. They wrote a deliberately plain problem statement. Too many of our VLBW babies are developing NEC, and they confirmed the gap was real by looking at the 7% baseline rather than trusting a gut feeling. Step 2. Organize. NEC prevention isn't one person's job, so the team included everyone whose hands are on the feeding process: a neonatologist, the bedside nurses who actually deliver feeds, a dietitian, lactation support, and pharmacy. They named 2 roles that projects often forget: a clinical lead to drive decisions, and a data owner to make sure the numbers actually get collected. And because mother's own milk is the backbone of the bundle, the parent's perspective was in the room too. Notice, no change has been made yet. That's deliberate.
Step 3. Clarify. Before touching anything, the team mapped how feeding actually happens on their unit, from the moment a baby is born, who starts feeds, when, and with what milk. Mapping the real process, not the imagined one, surfaced the problem. Feeding practice varied. The timing of the first feed and whether mother's own milk was used differed from shift to shift and clinician to clinician. That variation was invisible until they drew it out. Step 4. Understand. Now they asked why. Using a fishbone diagram and 5 whys, both covered in your companion deep dives for modules 5 and 6, they traced the variation to its roots. There was no standard feeding protocol, mother's milk wasn't reliably available, and the night shift had specific gaps. This is the pivotal move of the whole method. They didn't set out to attack NEC directly. They set out to attack the root causes of the variation that leads to NEC. Fix the process, and the outcome follows.
Step 5. Select. Here, the team turned root causes into a concrete change, the feeding bundle. Notice each element maps directly onto a gap they found. No standard protocol becomes a standardized feeding protocol. Unreliable mother's milk becomes early mother's own milk within 24 hours, plus a human milk-based approach with a clear fallback. The night shift and intolerance gaps become shared feeding intolerance guidance that everyone follows. The panel on the right explains why it's a bundle and not one silver bullet. No single practice prevents NEC on its own, but a small set of evidence-based practices done reliably together does move the rate. This is the end of the focus phase. The team now understands the problem and has chosen exactly what to test. Everything so far has been preparation. Now we test.
Now the PDSA half of the plan has two jobs: set the aim and choose the measures. The aim statement at the top is deliberately specific. Reduce NEC from 7% to below 3% within 12 months by reliably delivering the bundle. It names the what, the how much, and the by when. A vague aim like improve feeding practice gives you nothing to steer by. Then the three kinds of measure every project needs. The outcome measure is the NEC rate, the thing we ultimately care about, but it changes slowly. The process measure is bundle adherence. Are we actually doing the change every time? And it moves fast, which makes it your early warning signal. The balancing measure is growth and feeding tolerance, watching for unintended harm, because a change that lowers NEC but starves babies of nutrition isn't a win. 3 lenses, 1 plan. Do is where the plan meets the real world. 3 habits made this cycle work. First, they started small. The bundle was tested on a defined group of infants, not dumped on the whole unit at once. Small tests fail cheaply and teach quickly. Second, they collected data as they went, measuring adherence at every feed and tracking NEC and tolerance continuously, rather than guessing at the end. Third, and this is the discipline most teams skip, they documented reality honestly. When the bundle slipped on night shifts or when milk ran short, they wrote it down instead of hiding it. That honesty is gold, because those failure notes are exactly what you need to improve. The first cycle landed at 78% adherence and an NEC rate of 5.3%, already down from 7, but not yet at target, which is fine. That's what the next step is for. Study is where you compare what happened to what you predicted. The chart tells the story. On the left, NEC falls each cycle, 7% at baseline, down to 5.3 after cycle 1, and down to 2.8 after cycle 2. On the right, adherence climbs from 78 to 91.6%. Now put those 2 panels together, because that's the real insight. Where adherence rose, NEC dropped. The process measure moved first, and the outcome followed. That's not a coincidence. It's the proof that the bundle, done reliably, is what's driving the result. And the gaps the team found in cycle 1 weren't failures to be embarrassed about. They were a map. They told the team precisely where to focus cycle 2. Shore up the night shift, fix the milk supply. Reading data honestly means letting it tell you where to go next, not defending what you already did. Act is the decision point, and there are exactly 3 choices. Adopt. The change worked and it's doable, so you make it the standard. Write it into protocol, train everyone, and lock in the gain. Adapt. It's promising but not quite there, so you tweak a barrier and test again. Abandon. Adherence was good, but the change simply didn't move the outcome, so you drop it, keep what you learned, and try something else. A quick memory aid. Adopt has an O for OK done. Adapt has an A for again. Watch what tiny steps actually did, because it used 2 of these in sequence. After cycle 1, adherence was only 78%, and NEC wasn't at target. So they adapted. They fixed the night shift and milk supply gaps and ran a second cycle. When that pushed adherence to 91.6% and NEC to 2.8, the change had proven itself. So they adopted it as standard practice. The deciding factor was always the adherence data. Step back and look at the whole arc as a series of turns of the wheel. At baseline, NEC was 7%, and there was no standard practice. Cycle 1 brought it to 5.3 at 78% adherence, and the decision was adapt. Cycle 2 brought it to 2.8 at 91.6% adherence, and the decision was adopt. But adopting isn't the finish line. The 4th card is the next cycle. Hold the gain and spread it. Sustaining a change is its own work. Without it, rates drift back.
And once this problem is stable, the same team can point the wheel at the next gap. This is the single most important habit to take from the whole course. The bundle wasn't designed perfectly on day one and rolled out. It was assembled and tightened one cycle at a time. Improvement is iterative. You don't need the perfect plan. You need the first turn of the wheel.
10 takeaways, the distilled version of everything you've learned. 1. Focus before you fix. Understand the problem before you change it. 2. Pick a problem that's serious, measurable, and worth solving. 3. Put everyone who touches the process on the team. 4. Map the real process, not the one you imagine. 5. Attack the root causes of variation, not the outcome directly. 6. Bundle small, evidence-based changes and do them reliably, together. 7. Write a specific aim. How much, by when. 8. Measure all three types: outcome, process, and balancing. 9. Start small, collect data honestly, and document what breaks. 10. Let your adherence data drive the adopt, adapt, or abandon decision, and then turn the wheel again. If you internalize just these 10, you can run a real improvement project. Everything else is refinement.
You've now watched the entire Focus PDSA method run from start to finish on a real project, from a 7% NEC baseline down to 2.8, driven by bundle adherence climbing from 78 to 91.6%. Here's the thing to remember as you leave. The method itself was never the point. Knowing Focus PDSA changes nothing until you use it. So here's your move. Don't wait for a perfect project or a committee's blessing. Take one process on your own unit. Feeding, hand hygiene, discharge, whatever frustrates you. Find its baseline and run the first small cycle. It won't be perfect, and it doesn't need to be. That's what the second cycle is for. Improvement is a skill, and like any skill, it grows every single time you use it. Thank you for completing the course. Now go turn your wheel.